In order to define the role for a potential firewall once we've installed the software, we need to run the initial configuration wizard, which we can do using the web user interface. So in our topology, we've got the operating system for Gaia installed on this potential firewall. So what we'll do from our PC is we'll open up an HTTPS session to that IP address and then follow the wizard for the initial configuration of that device. So on our client machine, we'll bring up a browser. We'll use HTTPS to go to the IP address of that gateway, which is at .111. It has a self-signed certificate, so we'll click on Advanced, scroll to the bottom, and click on Proceed to that IP address anyways. Once here, we'll log on as admin. We'll supply our lab password and click Login. Very similar to when we installed the security manager, the initial wizard is where we define what the role is going to be of this device. So we'll click on Next and Next again. We have the Ethernet 0 interface at .111. That's great. We'll click on Next. And let's also configure Ethernet 1 while we're here. So if we peek at the topology here, the Ethernet 1 interface is connected to this cloud. It's going to have the IP address of 67.83.0. And the last octet is always going to be .111 on firewall 1. So let's configure the Ethernet 1 interface with that IP address. So regarding Ethernet 1, we'll go ahead and from the dropdown, we'll specify that we want to manually configure that, and then we'll plug in the IP address of 67.83.0.111 with a 24-bit mask, and we'll leave IPv6 off for the moment, and we'll click on Next to continue. Let's give this guy a name. We'll call it Firewall-1. And for DNS, let's tell them to use 192.168.1.100, which is the DNS server I have here in the lab, and click on Next. For time, let's also specify that we want to use an NTP server here on the firewall, and we'll point to 192.168.1.100, which is also acting as an NTP server, and click on Next. We'll leave the top radio button selected, click on Next, and here, because this is going to be just a gateway, just a firewall, not a security manager, we'll go ahead and remove the check and leave the check next to Security Gateway, which will leave the role of this device that we're configuring to be just a gateway. So with that check in the top box, we'll go ahead and click on Next. We're not using dynamically assigned IP addresses, so we'll go ahead and say no to that and click on Next. And now it's asking for an activation key. Now, because this firewall that we're configuring is going to be managed by this manager, they're going to set up some secure communications to do that. But initially, they need an initial password that they can use to communicate securely. So that's what this question is about right here. So we'll go ahead and put our lab password in, and I'll go ahead and confirm that as well. And then we'll click on Next to continue. There's options regarding improving product experience by setting data checkpoint. We'll click on Finish, and then we'll click on Yes to start the configuration process. So we'll let this first time configuration wizard complete, and when it does, it'll prompt us for a reboot. So here's our message saying we need to restart the system, so we'll click on OK for that. And then after a few minutes, after the reboot is complete, we can log back in once again just to verify that it's up and available as a gateway. And now that that reboot is complete, let's go ahead and log back in. So we'll supply the username admin and our lab password and click on Login. And this time it's not prompting us for the initial configuration because it's already been done. And now this gateway is ready to play ball as we integrate it as part of our checkpoint topology. In this nugget, we've taken a look at doing the initial configuration with the web user interface on a checkpoint device that's going to be acting purely as a gateway. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.